Welcome to TNShadowStories, where the unknown never sleeps. There are places where time stands still, and the sound of children's laughter drifts from beyond the grave. Tonight, follow me into the shadows of a cursed playground, one that lies beside the oldest cemetery in Alabama. A place the world forgot, but that never forgot us. Are you ready? Then turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and whatever you do, don't look behind you. Parker James had lived in Huntsville, Alabama since he was a child, a peaceful town with sprawling oak trees and cobbled old roads. At 17, he was tall and slender, with tousled brown hair and gray eyes that always shimmered with curiosity. Despite being rational and grounded, Parker had a particular fascination with the supernatural, and nothing intrigued him more than the place just a few hundred meters from his home Maple Hill Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in Alabama. The people of Huntsville had whispered about Maple Hill for decades, not just for its age, but because of a small area bordering its edge, a playground once meant for children. Locals had dubbed it the Playground of the Dead. Adults dismissed it as nonsense, but teens told a different story. Tales of white apparitions, children's laughter echoing in the dead of night, and swings that moved without wind had become local legend. Parker had grown up hearing those stories, but to him, they weren't just rumors, they were an invitation. It was an October night, precisely 12:03 p.m. The sky was moonless, the air crisp, and a thin fog floated over the ground like a breath held too long. Parker arrived at Maple Hill's playground with his girlfriend, Eliza, a redhead with a dimple on her left cheek, and her best friend, Madeline. They climbed over the rotting wooden fence, its creaking sounding like the groan of something ancient and forgotten. The playground lay in eerie stillness. The swing sets creaked faintly. There was no breeze, only an unnatural silence. They each sat on a swing, gently rocking, laughing nervously to break the tension. But within minutes, Madeline froze in the middle of the playground. Her eyes widened, her entire body stiffened. "We need to leave. Now," she whispered, voice trembling. "Someone's standing at the edge of the woods, watching us." Eliza chuckled, about to make a joke, but the color drained from her face when she saw the look on Madeline's, pale as paper. Madeline began to tremble violently, clutching her chest as if she couldn't breathe. She collapsed to her knees in full panic. Parker and Eliza had no choice but to drag her away. Later, after calming down, Madeline admitted something she'd never shared before since childhood. She had seen things others couldn't. She usually avoided places like Maple Hill, but she had come along out of loyalty to her friends. What she saw that night wasn't human. It was a shadowy figure, nearly 7 feet tall, faceless, but somehow, she knew it was smiling. A week passed. Parker returned, this time with only Eliza. The air was colder, the wind sharper, and a metallic tang hung in the air, causing Eliza to cough softly. They sat on the swings again, this time more solemn. No one laughed. The night was unnaturally quiet, even the insects were silent. After a while, Parker suggested they enter the cemetery, a place he had always hesitated to explore. Under the beam of their phones, rows of gravestones emerged like silent sentinels. Some dated back to 1802, covered in moss and decay. Parker stopped and took a quick photo, just a spontaneous act of bravado. Then they left. Nothing unusual seemed to happen. The next morning during chemistry class, Parker got a text from Eliza. She had sent the same photo from the night before, but now the image was different. Hundreds of white orbs floated across the frame. Some were the size of tennis balls, others as small as dust motes, dimly glowing, suspended in the air above the graves. The original photo had been empty. Eliza swore she hadn't altered it. Stranger still, after she sent it, her messaging app closed itself without warning. That night, Eliza couldn't sleep. She dreamt repeatedly of a little girl in a white dress standing outside her window, holding a torn teddy bear and missing her eyes. The next morning, when Parker came to visit, he found her shaken, arms and legs covered in scratch marks she claimed had come from the girl in her dream. Parker began digging deeper. He found an old newspaper article from 1964 describing a tragic event at Maple Hill. 3 children had gone missing during a game of hide-and-seek near the cemetery. A week later, their bodies were found behind the playground, not far from the graves. The area was fenced off for years, but eventually reopened to the public as if nothing had happened. The more Parker investigated, the more bizarre things became. His phone would turn on its camera by itself at night. His computer randomly played lullabies, even when no applications were open. Eliza deteriorated mentally, losing sleep and mumbling about a little friend who stood in the corner of her room. It all reached a terrifying climax in mid-November. Parker, determined to face whatever haunted the place, returned alone to Maple Hill, armed with an infrared camera, a flashlight, and a small wooden crucifix. He stepped into the dark. At 2:46 his camera captured something, a faint, towering figure just meters behind him. It didn't move, but when Parker turned around, it was gone. Laughter, high-pitched and childlike, erupted around him. He ran. As he glanced back one final time, he saw a swing moving by itself and a small figure in a white dress sitting on it. Back turned. Parker never returned to Maple Hill. Eliza moved away with her family. Madeline cut off all contact. The photo with the orbs remains on Parker's phone, a chilling reminder that some places once entered never truly let you go. And that playground, it still opens every night, waiting for the next curious soul to step in. The next story, the phantoms of Old Willow Creek Cemetery. The town of Havenwood, Maine, was swallowed by the silent night. The persistent Saturday evening drizzle had turned the cobblestone streets slick and reflective under the dim yellow glow of the streetlights. The air was cool and damp, carrying the scent of rich earth and decaying leaves, seeping into every nook and cranny of the old town, creating an atmosphere both peaceful and subtly ominous. The Whispering Elm Inn, with its 2 centuries of history, stood solemnly amidst the scene, warm yellow lights spilling from its windows like watchful eyes piercing the darkness. It had witnessed the ebb and flow of countless generations, holding untold mysterious tales within its ancient walls. Michael, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and inquisitive blue eyes, was enjoying a weekend getaway in Havenwood with his sister. Jessica, a graceful woman with chestnut hair and a warm smile, and Jessica's 2 daughters, Ashley and Lily. Ashley, a vibrant 16-year-old with bright eyes, and Lily, a mischievous 12-year-old with a vivid imagination. Both found the town's quiet charm and antique beauty a welcome change from the bustling life of Portland. In the cozy common room of the inn, where a crackling fire danced in the old stone fireplace, Michael, Jessica, and the girls were looking over a worn wooden bulletin board. A faded flyer with bold, dark print caught their attention. Haunted Cemetery Tour. Uncover Havenwood's sinister secrets. Wow, this looks exciting, Michael exclaimed, his eyes lighting up. A ghost walk through a haunted cemetery. This is exactly what we need to spice up this trip. Jessica smiled, a slight furrow in her brow. It sounds a bit spooky, but I think it could be fun. What do you girls think? Ashley and Lily, already growing a little bored with museums and antique shops, enthusiastically agreed. Awesome, I want to see a real ghost. Lily cheered, her round eyes wide with anticipation. Michael checked the flyer again. Tonight, 8 p.m., meet at the gate of Old Willow Creek Cemetery. Time quietly ticked by. By about 7:45 p.m., the rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast and heavy, dark clouds obscuring the moon. They left the inn, carrying a mix of excitement and apprehension. Old Willow Creek Cemetery lay at the edge of town, hidden behind a dense curtain of tall, ancient trees with thick, sprawling branches that formed a mystical dark barrier. As they approached the meeting point, a strange chill and profound silence enveloped the area. The rusty iron gate creaked softly in the gentle breeze, and there was not a soul in sight. Michael frowned, checking his watch. "That's odd. We're right on time." Jessica tried to reassure him. "Maybe they're just running a little late. Let's wait a few more minutes." They stood under the faint streetlights, the wind whistling softly through the ancient tree branches, creating peculiar sounds, like mournful sighs. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The cemetery remained shrouded in darkness, and no one appeared. Suddenly, a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with fiery red hair and a faded denim jacket, walked past on the road. Jessica waved to her. "Excuse me," Jessica called out, her voice friendly. "Do you know anything about the haunted cemetery tour tonight? We're here, but no one else seems to be." The young woman stopped, her green eyes looking at them with surprise. "The haunted cemetery tour? Oh, that only happens on Friday nights. Tonight's Saturday." A wave of disappointment washed over the group. Ashley and Lily's shoulders slumped, their earlier enthusiasm vanishing. Michael sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Well, we got the day wrong." "Oh, well," Jessica said, trying to lift their spirits. "We came all this way, so we might as well do something. How about we grab a warm drink somewhere to steal our nerves, and then explore the cemetery ourselves? It's dark already. Maybe exploring on our own will be even more exciting." Michael chuckled, looking at his sister with approval. "You always have the most daring ideas, Jessica." They walked back to the main street, finding a small pub called the Groggy Ghoul, with dim lights and a melancholic blues tune drifting out. 2 cold beers for the adults and sodas for the kids helped to ease their disappointment. Gradually, the alcohol and curiosity seeped into their minds, replacing their initial apprehension with a surprising boldness. "All right," Michael said, setting his beer glass down, his eyes gleaming with determination. "We're conquering that haunted cemetery ourselves. No guide, no problem." They returned to Old Willow Creek Cemetery. By now, complete darkness had fallen. The tall tombstones, jagged like the teeth of a colossal creature, loomed under the faint moonlight. The air was colder, eerily still, carrying the scent of damp earth mixed with withered wildflowers. Their footsteps echoed on the moss-covered cobblestone path. The rusty iron gate creaked again as Michael pushed it open. A strange sense of calm enveloped them as they stepped inside. There was none of the terrifying atmosphere they had expected, only the quiet solemnity and dignity of a resting place. The ancient trees, with their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal arms, cast bizarre shadows across the grave markers. Michael, with his digital camera in hand, began taking photos. "Hey, this place is actually quite beautiful," he murmured, adjusting the lens. The camera flash pulsed repeatedly, illuminating the inscriptions on the headstones, the moss-covered stone angels, and the leaning crucifixes. Some of the photos looked a little creepy, with lurking shadows and flickering light, but they weren't overly concerned. The slight buzz from the beer and their overriding curiosity had overridden any latent fear. "I'm going to wander around a bit," Michael said, gesturing towards another section of the cemetery where older, larger graves lay in deeper shadow. "I want to find some more unique angles," Jessica nodded. "Be careful, okay." Michael glided between the rows of tombstones, his footsteps light, like a ghost's. The camera flash from his device flickered continuously, like the elusive glow of fireflies in the night. Jessica and the girls stood near the entrance, listening to Michael's movements and watching the camera's light. The tombstones here were towering, some over 7 feet tall, more than 2 meters, obscuring their view, making it impossible to see Michael clearly. Time passed. The silent minutes were suddenly shattered by Michael's piercing scream. "Oh my God, guys, look what I just caught!" His voice was filled with a mix of astonishment and a hint of panic. Jessica and the girls jumped, then immediately ran towards Michael's voice. He stood there, gasping for breath, his face pale under the camera's flash, He thrust the camera out to them, his finger trembling as he pointed at the display screen. On the screen, a dark image of a tombstone appeared, but what was astonishing was what hovered above it. Several glowing orbs shimmered, floating in the air. One of them, in the center of the photo, was unusually large, emitting a milky white pearlescent light that stood out against the deep black of the night. It looked like a giant, self-illuminating crystal, suspended impossibly in midair. "What is that?" Ashley whispered, her voice a mix of fear and curiosity. Lily tugged at Jessica's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm scared." Michael paid no attention to Lily's fear. His eyes were glued to the camera screen, a strange excitement overriding his initial panic. "We have to take more. This must be a supernatural phenomenon. This is proof." He looked at them with pleading, almost compelling eyes. "Come on, come with me. We have to get more shots." Jessica hesitated. Part of her wanted to turn and run, but her overwhelming curiosity and the lingering buzz from the beer urged her on. Michael was always the adventurous one, and she knew he wouldn't give up. After some persuasion, they finally agreed. Ashley and Lily reluctantly followed, their steps heavy, their eyes darting around as if searching for something unseen. They followed Michael to the far side of the cemetery, where older, more isolated, and less maintained graves lay. Weeds grew profusely, covering crumbling stone markers, and ancient ivy clung tightly to the stone walls, creating a desolate, gloomy appearance. The air here felt thicker, as if something invisible was pressing down on their chests. An unnamed pressure. Michael continued to raise his camera, the shutter clicking repeatedly in the silent night. The flash illuminated dark corners again. This time, he managed to capture the giant glowing orb again, hovering near an ancient oak tree, its gnarled branches twisting like gaunt fingers reaching toward the sky. It emitted an ethereal light, seemingly shimmering the air around it. They all leaned in to look at Michael's camera screen. The image of the enormous orb was still there, shockingly clear and vivid. Everyone held their breath, absorbed in the photograph's mystery. Suddenly, a small, terrified shriek from Lily pierced the quiet. "Oh, what's that?" They all looked up, their eyes fixed on a single point. And then, they saw it, not far from them, a few yards away, barely visible amidst the shadows of trees and tombstones, were three faint figures. They didn't stand on the ground but hovered about a foot, approximately 30 centimeters above it, as if weightless. They appeared shimmery, as if made of light or thick mist. The most terrifying thing was their attire. They wore old-fashioned clothing, tattered and faded, reminiscent of fashion from previous centuries, perhaps colonial or early 19th century attire. Their faces were blurry, indistinct, without clear features, but the chilling sensation emanating from them seemed to solidify the air around them, sending a cold shiver down their spines. A frigid gust of air raced down Jessica's spine. Her heart pounded in her chest. Ashley clutched her mother's arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear, unable to blink. Lily had burst into uncontrollable sobs, burying her face in Jessica's side, trembling relentlessly. Despite the profound shock and the encroaching fear, oddly enough, none of them felt an overwhelming urge to flee immediately. Perhaps it was overwhelming curiosity, or maybe the lingering effects of the alcohol, that kept them rooted there, stunned, as if held captive by some unseen force. "Take their picture, Michael," Jessica whispered, her voice trembling. "This is proof you have to take their picture." Michael, who was always ready to photograph anything, now stood motionless. His face was stark white, his eyes fixed on the three shimmering figures, as if mesmerized. A sudden, inexplicable change. He took a step back, then another, as if some invisible force was pulling him away. "Michael, what are you doing?" Jessica asked, her voice filled with confusion. "Take the picture." But Michael didn't reply. He began to walk, heading back toward the entrance, his feet moving slowly, almost involuntarily. All he said, his voice hoarse and filled with profound dread, was, "We've been here too long. Let's go." There was no explanation, no backward glance, only the inexplicable refusal and the sheer terror etched on his face. Jessica and the girls looked at each other, then watched Michael's retreating figure disappear into the shadows. They had no choice but to follow him. They ran. The wet leaves underfoot crunched and rustled, but they paid no attention. Fear had replaced curiosity. As they reached the old path leading out of the cemetery, Michael suddenly stopped. He turned around, looking at them with a warning in his eyes. "You girls go first," he said, his voice no longer his own, but a strange, strained tone. "Be careful not to slip on the wet leaves." Jessica and Ashley, still reeling, obeyed him instinctively. Lily was still sobbing, clinging tightly to Jessica. They walked in silence, their footsteps echoing on the path. The air around them seemed to thicken, carrying a heavy sensation, as if something unseen was closely following them, its cold breath on their necks. Suddenly, a loud, terrified scream erupted from Michael. "It told me! Get out!" His scream echoed in the dark night, piercing through the ancient trees, carrying an ultimate horror. Jessica and the girls gasped, their hearts seemingly stopping. Without hesitation, they ran as fast as they could. Their feet pounded on the dry leaves, creating loud rustling sounds. They flew, not daring to look back, wanting only to escape that cursed place as quickly as possible. When they finally burst out of the cemetery gate, sprinting onto the main road and seeing the familiar streetlights, Jessica gasped for breath, holding the trembling Lily tightly. She turned to Michael, her face pale with fear and anger. "What are you playing at, Michael?" Jessica snapped, her voice trembling with emotion. "Telling us to go slowly, be careful, and then scaring us like that. Are you crazy?" Michael leaned against a tree, panting, his face still ashen. His eyes were wide, reflecting a deep terror Jessica had never seen in her brother before. "Oh, Jessica," Michael whispered, his voice hoarse and shaky. "When we passed that old oak tree, there was a voice right in my ear, a truly unsettling voice, chilling to the bone." He shivered. It only said one word, just one word, "Get out!" He paused, swallowing hard, as if he could still feel the horror of that voice. But it was such a threatening voice. Jessica, it was so horrifying I can't describe it. Like a prolonged hiss, but full of anger and authority. It wasn't a normal human voice. It was something else. Michael looked into Jessica's eyes, his own filled with remorse. "I'm sorry I scared you three, but I just said we needed to turn back because something behind me seemed to be telling me to get out. It didn't speak in words, but I felt a tremendous pressure, an irresistible urge, like an invisible hand was pushing me out of there. I didn't want to scare you three. That's why I just said we had stayed too long." Jessica looked at Michael, then back at the darkness shrouding the cemetery. Now, a thin mist had begun to swirl among the tombstones, creating an even more ghostly appearance. She knew Michael wasn't easily frightened, and his words, along with the terror on his face, made her believe he had genuinely experienced something horrific. They stood there, under the faint streetlight, their hearts still pounding erratically. That night, sleep wouldn't come to them. The images of the three shimmering figures hovering, Michael's terrified voice, and the words, "Get out," continued to haunt their minds. Old Willow Creek Cemetery, a place that once held a sense of peace and solemnity, had now become a nightmare, a living testament to supernatural phenomena that science couldn't explain. And they, who had once been skeptics, had now become witnesses to a chilling truth. A secret Havenwood had kept hidden for 2 centuries. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to TNShadowStories so you don't miss our next chilling tales. See you in the next video.